Good day, my hardcore students. This is Menopause Taylor bringing you the state of menopause in the world today. I'm your hardcore teacher, Menopause Taylor. Now, this is going to be another practical lesson on menopause. Today, we're going to talk about what gets harder at menopause. And, I know you're probably rolling your eyes. This is part of my series called WHAM, or What Happens at Menopause. And the fact is, many things get harder at menopause. A couple of things get harder in the anatomical or physical sense, and a whole bunch of things get harder in the social or emotional sense. So I'm going to lay out all the things get harder and hopefully make it easier for you to understand why they get harder. And I'll categorize these things as we go along. First, we have the anatomical parts that get harder at menopause. They include your heart arteries and your ovaries. And starting with your heart arteries, this is the most important thing of all. Of everything we discussed today, the heart arteries are by far the most important aspect of hardening. I have told you many times that heart attacks kill 1 out of 2 women in the menopausal years. That one statistic is more important than anything else you will ever learn about menopause. And the very reason 1 out of 2 women die of a heart attack is because your arteries literally get harder at menopause. You've probably heard the term hardening of the arteries. Well, that's exactly what happens. Your heart arteries go from being soft to becoming hard. Before menopause, your heart arteries are like soft, supple tubing. And estrogen is what makes them soft and supple. When you lose your estrogen, your arteries start aging. And for arteries, aging means hardening. So as your arteries age, they get stiffer. They go from being that soft tubing to being more like a hose. They're not as soft and supple as they once were. And with time, they get even harder, so hard that they're brittle. They become hard like a metal pipe. Not really like a metal pipe, but that's the analogy. Over time, they change a lot. They go from super soft to super hard. The harder your arteries get, the higher your risk of a heart attack, period. Oh, and stroke and blood clots. Now, the very reason this hardening happens is the absence of estrogen. Way back when, many podcasts ago, I covered a series called The Estrogen Window of Opportunity. The estrogen window of opportunity pertains to the first 5 to 10 years of your postmenopause. And it's when you can still start taking estrogen to prevent a heart attack as well as osteoporosis and Alzheimer's. So the estrogen window is all about timing. And hardening of your arteries is all about timing. Everything is all about timing. The bottom line is that if you take estrogen early in your postmenopause, before your arteries get hard, the benefits of HRT outweigh the risks. Why? Because the estrogen keeps your arteries soft and supple and prevents hardening in the first place. But if you go long enough without estrogen and you let your arteries get hard and then you take estrogen, the risks may outweigh the benefits. Why? Because by that time, your arteries are already too hard. They can no longer handle what they used to need. So starting estrogen too late can cause more harm than good. Timing. This is why women think there's conflicting information or different opinions on the effect of estrogen on heart attacks. There is no conflict. It has nothing to do with anyone's opinion. It's all about timing. Timing of estrogen replacement. If you start early, it prevents a heart attack. If you start late, it can cause a heart attack. That is why it is so important for you to get this education earlier. The longer you wait, the more limited your options. An analogy would be, let's say you were a runner in your 20s and you used to go out and run like crazy and you were thin and svelte and you had no heart problems, no diabetes, no high blood pressure, your knees were in great shape, running was good for you. But let's say 30 years goes by. You gain a bunch of weight, you have heart problems, you have high blood pressure, you have diabetes, your knees are bad, you have arthritis. If you run then, you're going to get hurt. Running hasn't changed. You have. The aging process has made it such that something that was totally good for you is no longer good for you. Something that used to benefit you is now too risky for you. That's the same thing that happens when it comes to the timing of taking estrogen on your heart arteries. Okay, the next anatomical part that hardens at menopause is your ovaries. Before menopause, your ovaries are in the business of producing eggs and estrogen. They are a factory. They're big, plump, glistening, and white. Every month they manufacture an egg. All month they're pouring out estrogen. But at postmenopause, they shut down. The whole factory goes out of business. So your ovaries shrink up, harden, dry up, and lay dormant. They become so small that they're really hard to find on pelvic exam, on ultrasound, by any test. This is why it is never, never, never normal for a postmenopausal woman to have an enlarged ovary or an ovarian cyst. Postmenopausal ovaries are supposed to be tiny, hard, and completely inactive. Any enlargement suggests something that is definitely not normal. Okay, our next category of things that become harder is things that become harder physically. They include weight maintenance, exercise, a good night's sleep, and resisting alcohol. Maintaining your weight becomes harder. Why? Because your metabolism slows down a whole lot at menopause. Your body processes food differently. The things you used to eat without any consequence now put weight on you. Even if you change nothing about the way you eat, you'll gain weight. And most of your weight gain will be in your abdominal region. And guess what? Weight in your abdominal region is the hardest weight to lose. No matter what, weight maintenance and definitely weight loss are harder at menopause. So, when maintaining your weight gets harder, what do? You exercise. Problem is, exercise gets harder at menopause too. Your joints hurt. Your energy level isn't what it used to be. And you hurt yourself more easily. Exercise that involves impact, speed, or heavy weights tends to be what people use to lose or maintain their weight. But that's the very type of exercise that gets harder at menopause. Sounds like a vicious cycle, doesn't it? Have you seen a few vicious cycles in this education on menopause? Have you not noticed that there's a lot of vicious cycles? Okay, so it is a vicious cycle, and part of the reason that both weight maintenance and exercise are harder is because of the next factor, getting a good night's sleep. It gets harder also. At menopause, it's harder to fall asleep, harder to stay asleep, harder to sleep all the way through the night, and harder to get good, deep, solid sleep. So that makes everything you need to do throughout the day harder too. You see, one thing leads to another. One thing's hard, the next thing's harder, the next thing's harder. It turns out badly for a lot of women. And the last thing that becomes physically harder at menopause is resisting alcohol. Now, you know that every hormonal phase of your life involves cravings, right? At puberty, you crave carbs. With PMS, you crave caffeine and chocolate. During pregnancy, it may be pickles or something odd. And at menopause, it's alcohol. Surprisingly, most women are unaware that craving alcohol or even abusing alcohol is such a common problem at menopause. And that's because they don't talk about it. In fact, they conceal it. There are menopausal women who walk around with water bottles full of alcohol. And they will start drinking at 9 or 10 in the morning if they're having these cravings. And they drink all day long. They are absolutely addicted to their alcohol, and it's a hard addiction to break. The next is a category of things that get harder socially at menopause. They include getting a job, keeping your job, and taking care of your aging parents. You know, many women decide to go back to work at the time of menopause. I mean, their kids have left home, their family duties have lessened, and they miss being a part of the workforce. But what they discover is that getting a job is very hard. Despite the fact that menopausal women make great employees, they have a hard time finding anyone who will employ them. So many of the skills that are lacking in younger employees come really easily to menopausal women. But employers tend to reject women because of their age, especially if they've been out of the workforce for a long time. And if you already have a job, you find that it's harder and harder to keep it. Whether that's because all your symptoms of menopause make it harder to actually do your job, or whether it's because younger employees are vying for the job, either way, it's hard. And there aren't any accommodations at all for menopausal women in the workplace. Not one. No fans, no rooms for resting, no time off, nothing. Menopausal women who work will tell you that it gets harder and harder to keep up with their work. Many women eventually quit simply because they just find it too hard to manage both their work and their menopause. And next comes the issue of your aging parents. I gave you a whole podcast on this long ago. It is so common for the caretaking responsibilities of aging parents to fall on women. And it just so happens that the time at which those responsibilities become necessary is right smack dab in the throes of menopause for most women. I mean, there couldn't be a harder time to deal with aging and infirm parents. For some women, this turns out to be the hardest aspect of menopause, all things considered. And finally, we have the category of things that get emotionally harder at menopause. They include your personality, putting up with a domineering partner, and acquiescence. Now face it, your personality gets harder at menopause. You know how men tend to mellow as they age? Well, women do just the opposite. They harden. Long ago, I depicted the many ways in which men and women trade places at menopause. And this is just one of them. And it makes perfect sense, actually, when you think about it, because you lose your estrogen, which used to make you so soft and sweet. Men have a decrease in their testosterone, which used to make them so hard and brutish. At menopause, we switch. For some women, this hardening is a good thing. It makes them stronger, more confident, and more assertive. For others, it's a bad thing because it makes them mean and argumentative. This hardening of your personality creates the next emotionally hard dynamic, and that is with your partner. If you've been a submissive wife for a long time, this hardening of your personality can make getting along with your controlling partner a lot harder. Menopause involves a lot of clashes within couples. Many consider divorce or actually pursue divorce, and this is one of the reasons why. By the time they're menopausal, many women realize that they don't need a man to take care of them anymore.